if you feel like your PPC costs have been going crazy, maybe your CPCs, your cost per click are rising, you're feeling like I'm having to spend more on ads to get share, I'm losing organic ranking. If that feels like you, give me a hand raise. Yes, yeah, some people with 2 hands, yeah. Big chunk of us. And that's kind of what we've been seeing and feeling, across the board as well. And I think there's a lot of things that kind of go into this. So this is one of the accounts that we manage. Back in December of 19, they were seeing cost per click of around $1.15. Fast forward to January of 2022, cost per click of $2.66. That's over 131% increase. Another account that we work on, January of 2021, it went back there. Oh, no, we're good, okay. So January 2021, $1.51, January 2023, $3.69, and that's 144% increase. So this is kind of things that we're seeing across the board. Now, you might be saying, okay, well, that could be strategy related, right? Like if they're trying to push harder, gain more market share, and yes, there is an aspect of that, but it's also, we're seeing more competition, rising costs. So basically it's safe to say, whoa, Amazon ads are getting expensive. Amazon's opening more and more placements across the board for you to be able to advertise on, which is ultimately pushing down organic placement, and it's becoming much more of a pay-to-play kind of environment. So in 2020, if we look at Amazon's advertising revenue, it was $19.8 million. In 2021, $31.1 million. 2022, $37.7 million. If that trend line continues, looking at 2026, upwards of $64.4 million. And so all of that means is ultimately we're probably going to see ad costs continuing to rise. So Amazon over the years, they built this massive empire. They get all of this, buyer traffic because they're a trusted source. And so ultimately, they're monetizing that traffic, right? Getting us to buy it. And basically, we kind of battle it out with each other, right? Like, we're being more aggressive with our bids because we want that traffic. We want to show up in all those places. And it just kind of puts us, against each other, which naturally raises costs higher. And, what ends up happening? Well, ultimately, Amazon's winning, right? To, the tune of those tens of millions of dollars in ad revenue. So, I'm sure you're kind of thinking to yourself, well, what do we do about this, right? Like, how do I compete in an environment where it's going to keep getting more and more expensive? It's a good question. So one of my favorite quotes from Dan Kennedy is, whoever can afford to spend the most to acquire a new customer wins. And that is the solution, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I want to see you guys be able to afford to spend the most to acquire the customer and still win. So there's 3 main things that I'm going to cover. 1, we're going to talk about optimizing your click-through rate and your conversion rate. We're going to talk about what I believe is the best campaign structure to use for your Amazon PPC, in my humble opinion. And then we're going to talk about testing new things and trimming the fat. And if there's time, a little special bonus for you guys. If you sell consumables or you have a lot of repeat buyers, we'll talk about my Supre. Yes, that was a typo, but I left it. Supre secret, cost per acquisition, lifetime value hack. So let's jump into this. All right, so first and foremost, we're going to talk about optimizing your click-through rate and your conversion rate. And this is what I believe is the #1 way to actually improve your ACOS without sacrificing volume. So a lot of times between our clients or our members, the biggest thing we see is people saying like, man, my PPC is just so expensive, or it sucks. And I think they think that they're not very good at running ads, and there may be some learning curve that they're having to overcome. But ultimately, I think the bigger driver there is getting their click-through rate higher and their conversion rate higher. So we're going to talk about ways to do that. So if any of you guys follow Russell Brunson, and the whole ClickFunnels movement, pretty awesome crowd, but he has this concept that he calls, you're just one funnel away. And so I like to think of it as you're just one amazing split test away from drastically improving your conversion rate and your click-through rate on your listing. So let's talk about improving your click-through rate. So first and foremost, I think the most important thing is that main image. You want something that's going to grab people's attention. You want it to really stand out, so that when people are looking in the search results, they ultimately pick you, right? And so, the key here is, maybe you could feature something that, really is what differentiates your product or what makes it better. You want that to really show through in that main image. The second thing is going to be your title, right? So you can test different things with your title to make your click-through rate higher. Basically, maybe you try a long version versus a short version. You look at your PPC ads and the keywords that are driving the most sales for you. Obviously, you want to make sure that those keywords are represented in your title. And then, make sure that you're including buzzwords, things that are important to your ideal buyer, right? So maybe you talk about the quality of the materials of your product, what it's made out of, things that people care about, whether it's sustainable, all that sort of stuff that, they would care about, and it's going to grab their attention when they're in the search results. The third thing is your price. So you want to make sure that you have a super attractive price, leverage those Prime exclusive discounts, leverage the coupons. You'd be surprised how many people don't use them on a regular basis. And having those badges on your listing just kind of help make them stand out a little bit more in the search results. So, doing all of these things ultimately will help you have a higher click-through rate. It'll give you, lower cost per click as a result. And so the extra sessions that you have, should ultimately give you more sales. But we've got to convert those sessions into sales. So let's talk about increasing your conversion rate. So when it comes to increasing your conversion rate, one of the biggest things that I always tell people is making sure that you have A+ content. So yes, you have to be brand registered to have A+ content. So if you're a new seller, that's something you should prioritize. But one of the things that we've seen where we have listings where we don't, just for sake of an example, let's say you're converting at 10%, right? Well, we've had we add A+ content, and we'll see that conversion rate increase up to 12, 13, 14, 15% conversion rate just from adding A+ content rather than a normal text-based description. So I think that's super valuable. As far as being able to test things on A+ content, you can utilize the different widgets, test different types of images, incorporate, lifestyle, infographics, things like that within your A+ content to, always try to make it a little bit better. The next thing for conversion rate are going to be the images on your listing. So, obviously we talked about the main image being what's going to help you get the click-through, get people to the listing, but the additional images are ultimately what's going to, convert the listing, right? And so you want to make sure that you're telling a story. And one of the things I always say to all of our students is you want your images to be stupid simple. And the idea being you don't just have a picture, right? Put some words on there to tell people what you want them to get out of that picture. So then the next thing in terms of increasing conversion rate are going to be your bullets. So, you can test things like long versus short bullets. Maybe you do a very benefits-focused bullets, kind of like sales copy style. Or maybe, your audience is much more technical, right? They care more about, what are the features? What are the specs? That's the sort of thing that they care about, right? So obviously that's going to perform better than giving them some flowery, sales copy, benefit-laden kind of text. So you definitely want to test that. And then the final thing, if you don't have A+ content, obviously you can still test your product description section, trying to make that better and better every day. Again, utilizing some sort of sales copy style text, or you telling a story about your brand. Test different things there to ultimately improve the conversion rate. So we talked about the things to focus on. Let's talk about how we execute on those things. So Amazon has a program called Manage Experiments. And for the OG sellers, back in the day, split testing used to be a huge pain in the ass. We literally had to use third-party software. It didn't always work. It didn't always make the change because it couldn't always push it. Or we had to go in, manually make the adjustments, remember when to do it. Am I doing it tonight? Do I do it, on Monday? And then ultimately track the data. And so it was really hard to get good, clean data doing it that way. Well, now with Manage Experiments, Amazon makes it super simple. Basically, you just go in, you schedule the experiment that you want to run, and then basically they'll run it for you. They'll bifurcate your traffic. Send certain visitors to one version, certain visitors to the other, and you get good, clean data kind of showing you, which one performs better. Now, the thing that I kind of want to caution you guys on, so I know even for me in my business, there's times where it's like, it's easy to get stuck and not taking action because you're like, man, I got to come up with an idea that's going to be so good that it's going to, 2 or 3x my conversion rate on my listing. And I think thinking like that is what kind of, gives you that analysis by paralysis. So basically, if you think about it like a 1% improvement every single week over the course of a year, ultimately ends up being, like a 67% increase, which is a huge deal. So, think about it as like just doing something to try to make your listing a little bit better every single day. So kind of an extension of this pro tip, make sure that you're testing your second and third images. So this isn't something we can do and manage experiments right now. Whoever's here from Amazon, maybe you guys can help us get it so we can test other things. But I think it's super important to make sure those second and third images are super optimized. So here in this example, like if you're looking on mobile, right? When people land on your listing, they see your title, they see your images, their price, reviews. You scroll a little bit, you got like the buy button. And in some cases, when people shop, like that's literally all that they're looking at, right? So those images are super important. And if you think about kind of the buyer behavior, you're sitting on your phone, you're scrolling, you get to that second image, like if it's super boring, you're probably gonna bounce from the page, right? But if it really grabs your attention, that's huge. So, I think making sure the second and third images are based, lifestyle photos, infographics, and like really should be your best images besides that main image. That will go a long way to help grab attention.